I am so excited to be joined on the More Than the Music podcast by Miss Plumb. How you doing?
I am doing well, thank you.
Do I call you Plumb? Is that what I'm supposed to call you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what everybody calls you?
Yeah. At
Pretty
this
much.
Point, yeah. Yeah.
You've stuck with a name this long. People might as well call you that, right?
Started it as a band, and band members kind of switched around for the first couple years, and then the label was like, Plum is really a girl who has
you're
a band. And it was just sort of cute when like little 7, 8-year-old little girls would be like, Miss Plum, can you sign this? Because they didn't know what my first name was. So it just made it easy on everybody.
Well, today we're going to talk about the songs behind Excel, plus you've got a brand new song coming out that we're going to get to talk about as well. But before we jump into the music, let's go back to how it all began. You were born in Indianapolis, right? But grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a Georgia boy. I appreciate...
Nice.
I mean, I grew up...
Sweet tea? Do you like sweet tea?
Sweet tea.
Only way.
Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread.
Yes.
That was your Sunday meal.
It was,
that
for
was it.
Sure.
However, I grew up, when I tell people I'm from Georgia, they think Atlanta, but I grew up like 3 hours south of Atlanta.
Gotcha.
Almost Florida.
I was a little more towards the city. I was like 17 miles south of the Atlanta airport because my dad's job was with Delta, which is the hub.
Yep.
He is now retired, but that was,
That's where it all began. Is that where you started getting involved in music as a kid?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, my first solo, duet, whatever you want to call it, like experience with a microphone that was on, that wasn't pretend, was when I was like 3 with my dad back in Indiana where I was born, in church. But I just loved to sing. My favorite thing in the world was to just take a hairbrush or anything of that, that shape of some kind and stand in front of a mirror and just sing my brains out. And I just loved it. It was not anything I ever wanted to do as a career. I never, ever said I want to be a singer when I grow up. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, which I completely love and respect, and my dad worked. And although he says to this day he loved his job, I heard him complain about having to go to work a lot, like, I got to go to work tomorrow. So I sort of associated work with something you don't necessarily love to do. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll be like my mom, get married and have some babies and stay home, or I'll do a job I hate. And so to be a singer would be like amazing. And so I didn't really dream of that. So I just sang and sang and sang, and somebody saw me one day and it turned professional. Kind of, I would say the trajectory of it went professional kind of overnight. Hey, can you sing backup over here for this? Mm-hmm. And it just kind of opened a whole new world up, and here I am. Yeah,
you started going to nursing school, right?
I wanted to. Yeah. I was going to go to nursing school and wanted to be a nurse, just because I've struggled with anxiety and depression and really, really debilitating stomach aches that kind of falls under the umbrella of IBS, but that's like the most unbeautiful word to say on anywhere, like in print or audio, IBS. But I have what is called a spastic colon. And so just because I'd been in and out of the doctor's office all the time, I felt like being around medicine would be a place for me. I felt compassionate towards people suffering. And Mike Weaver from Big Daddy Weave has coined this phrase that I am a musical nurse. we were out on tour together, and I was talking about that, and he was like, but he said, God still uses you to give hope and healing in a different way. And I was like, you are hilarious and sweet that you would say that. So I'm now a musical nurse.
Yeah, well, either way you're helping people.
Yeah,
either way
absolutely.
You're encouraging them. Sure. Maybe not like
but yeah, the nursing thing was
that
was what I was gonna head towards, and then God kind of interrupted that with music, and so.
Yeah, and then you got into writing more and more and more, and at one point you were even thinking about coming off the stage and just being a songwriter.
Just being done with that. Yeah.
Something changed though. Like, didn't you get like a note from someone that made you keep going?
I did. Because I wasn't pursuing music when music kind of came to me and I said yes to it. Kind of get caught up in all of that, and then you kind of, with hindsight, a couple of years in, go, wait a minute, what did I sign?
Yeah. And
what I thought it would be different because I thought this would be different, and you kind of just to catch your breath, and so I kind of just, instead of taking quote unquote a break and just kind of gathering my wits about me, my knee-jerk reaction was to just sort of run and not just I don't want to be an artist anymore. This is too much, and I don't agree with this or that or the other. And traditionally speaking, I think as the brand of Plumb has grown, sort of a core element to it has been that it's not super, Christian. I mean, it's definitely been something that was not an intentional leave his name out or add his name in kind of a thing. I just loved storytelling. And so I think because my faith is rooted in the hope of the cross and the resurrection, I feel like that hope is webbed through what I write, but I might be writing just a love song that ends up in a TV show or in a movie. And so I was kind of pursuing music more that direction. And when I started to see sort of the business aspect of the more specific to the Christian industry, I was very turned off by that. And it wasn't anything I was anticipating. So I think some things caught me off guard, and I was like, hey, cut, run, I'm taking off.
So did someone like tell you can't write this way? You have to write a certain way to be a Christian artist?
There was a moment where a record, I won't go into terrible specifics because there's been a lot of healing and friendships rebuilt from that season, but there was a moment in time where I was told the record would be shelved until I used God's name on the project. Because the first record, I didn't say Jesus or God. And then at the same time, though, that record literally opened up to an audience of people that, although not limited to this audience, the broken girl identified with a song called Unforgivable about like emotional and verbal abuse, and that has never left me. The broken girl is my favorite audience, and because I have been a broken girl, and I connect with that audience, and so that record was so important for me in kind of defining the path that I was going to take. That may be a little left of center, a little different than maybe the other female artists that were in that same format as me, but record number 2 comes out, and it's getting ready to come out, and it's like, well, where's God and Jesus? It's not going to sell as good in Christian if you don't mention him at some point. And I was bitter, to say the least, about that. I was like, I feel like putting his name in purposefully to sell a song is just as wrong as leaving it out on intention. Yeah. I wasn't leaving it out intentionally so that VH1 would play, stuff. This is back in the late 90s. I was truly being what I thought was authentic and storytelling. And I think that if you interviewed me, if you came to a show, if you met me for 5 minutes, you would know that I love Jesus. But I didn't think that, St. Francis, is, we've all quoted him, of preach a sermon and if necessary use words. Like, I don't think you have to say his name, for it to be something reputable and relevant in that culture. And so eventually, the powers that be kind of bent, and God-shaped hole came into existence. And I resisted playing that song for a really long time. I said, I will never play it. You can put it on the record, but I'll never play it live, because I was really unhappy with how being authentic is so important to me, and I felt like that was a forced thing. Yeah. And someone told me one time, though, that when people respond to a song, when they connect with a song, when they are loving a song, they are drawing hope from it, whatever, that audience is a gift, and you give them that song. You don't get caught up in yourself and not play it just to spite, something. You're actually hurting yourself and your fans more. And so I actually brought God-Shaped Hole years later back into my set, did it a very different, a little more mellow performance of it. But I realized that there's absolute truth in the lyrics of that song, that within each of us, there is a vacuum that wants to be filled with something to satisfy. And we use money, we use food, we use sex, we use our careers, we use ourselves. We try to fill it with everything but him. Then he's like our last resort. And then we actually choose him, and somehow we're kind of dumbfounded by the fact that, like, it's a permanent fix. Now, I think it's a grace and salvation, and your relationship is a living, breathing, growing thing, and that you have to continue to choose it. Because he never quits choosing us, but you have to continue to choose that. But as you continue to choose it, there is a fulfillment that comes from that it's not void. And so it's only void when we turn our backs on it and start choosing those same things that I just mentioned a second ago. And so there's so much truth in that song. It's based on a C.S. Lewis conversation. And so I brought it back in. But that was a pivotal moment for me in my career, where I was like, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm not going to market Jesus. I'm just not that. No. Like, in my mind, if you do that, you better watch out. Lightning is going to strike, And so I just kind of cut ties and left. And because my songwriting side had grown, which was not something that I had anticipated being a part of what I did. I was a storyteller, but I felt like other people were more qualified to write the songs, and then I would then tell them and perform them. And I was mistaken, that God had given me a gift to songwrite and storytell and communicate that way. And so I took that and just started writing for other artists. And one of the first cuts I got outside of being an artist was a Mandy Moore song, and it paid very well. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to be a writer. I'm going to tell stories still, and I'm going to use this gift I have, but I'm not going to be the artist behind it. But my decision to do that was based on pride and bitterness and frustration, and so I'm thankful God doesn't need us. He just wants us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that season of me being there, the kingdom of God continued to advance with or without me. I was missing out by not choosing to be a part of what he was doing and what he created me for. And so a fan writes me a letter and says, a song that you wrote called Damaged about sexual abuse really connects with me. And she did, in her letter, she communicated this experience that is exactly what you want to happen. At least I do as a writer. I wrote a song about sexual abuse, and I want someone to identify with that, find hope in it, knowing they're not alone, and then go and let that shape their path to then share their story and use it for something good, to grow from, to be stronger from, to be braver from, not to wallow in and, curse God and die because I don't think God causes bad stuff or even allows it. I think that stuff happens because we're in a fallen world. What are you going to do with it? So this girl proceeds to tell me a story of how that song connected with her. She felt hope because she realized, for sure, if there's a song about this out there, clearly I'm not the only one who's been through this. And she grew from it and became stronger from it and is, telling her story. And she says in the letter, I just want you to know that what you're doing really makes a difference. It's changed my life. And I really hope you don't stop. And it was really, really, really humbling and emotional for me in that moment, because I had kind of put my foot down and said, I'm done doing this kind of, this aspect over here to my career. I'm done with that, God. And he used her in a tremendous way to say, you know what? I'm not going to orchestrate anything, but if you want me to keep doing this, I will. So it was an attitude adjustment. Mm-hmm. So as much as I could possibly ever try to be an influence on a fan, they have come back tenfold and been 10 times the influence on me and helped shape and guide and hold me accountable to what I think that I was created and called to do. And so fast forward, here I am still.
And you got that letter like literally before you were about to go on your last show, and you were done.
I was done with the label, done with the booking agency, done with like all the contracts of relationships, and on the calendar, here's the last show. And so, hey, there may be another show in my future, but for the best I could see, this was it. Mm-hmm. And so I think God has really good timing. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Did you ever hear back from her again? Did you ever communicate with her?
I sang in her wedding.
Really?
I brought her backstage. I actually went out that night and said, if you're here, because you gave me this letter earlier today at a music store. There was an autograph signing, CD signing kind of thing, and she came and brought me the letter, and I read it later. And so I said from stage, you gave this letter to me today. You have no idea what it means to me. So find somebody to get you backstage. I want to meet with you. And so she comes backstage, and I tell her the story, and she's emotional. I'm emotional. We're a basket case together, and we just stayed in contact. And so I don't talk to her often, but we still have each other's information and stay in touch to some capacity. But yeah, I got to sing in her wedding.
And that songwriting has not only continued for you, but there are so many artists on Way FM that like your fingerprints are all over. Like I've heard you've written with like Mandisa and a few other artists too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta enjoy like not only hearing your songs on the radio, but being a part of others too, and that message that they deliver.
Honestly, it's a good example of and what it's about and why it's important. I mean, radio is a great example of community, that I can write 1 million songs, but without the community of radio, without the community of, like you referenced Mandisa, for instance, like, so something that's important to me that she and I wrote about, she's out talking about while I'm over here talking. It's a megaphone. Mm-hmm. And so, you can make it for yourself and keep it pretty limited, but why? It's to be shared, I think. And so, yeah, I love writing with and for other artists as well.
And going back to when you first got started, like you were singing background vocals. You mentioned that earlier. Mm-hmm. Weren't you singing for like Bill Gaither?
Bill Gaither has.
How did that work?
His son.
We are on the homecoming videos.
No. I actually lived with he and his wife for a brief period of time until I found a roommate. But his son had a rock band at the time. And I use that term loosely. I don't even know if he would describe it as a rock band, but it was definitely more rock.
Bill Gates
and
rock.
His his son Benjamin had a band, and I sang in that, and that just opened up a door to singing backup for other artists, and then into the studio of other artists. So then I was singing backup, for Amy Grant, and then it just kind of excelled from there of being kind of taken serious that, you're not just a backup singer. We'd love to sign you. And so it just kind of, okay. And then we'd love you to write some music as well. And we, trust your pen. And so, kind of keeps going. And then sort of then write with and for other artists, and then to be a part of their careers. And just, it's a growing thing. If you are looking closely, I'm not limited to a singer, just like someone is not limited to being a doctor. I think we are so much more. He's created us to do all kinds of things. And so don't limit yourself to just the one. There may be something that you do best. It's what you do the best. I feel like singing is my strong suit. But I play a little piano. I play a little clarinet. I play a little guitar. I have an auto harp at my house. But I don't do any of those well. I use them to songwrite with, but I think my strong suit is right here, but I can also do this, this, and this. And God kind of pieces those together to make the main thing stronger. And
why didn't you bring your clarinet with you today?
Right. Well, the reed's broken, Justin.
The flute?
Honestly, when I play it now, I was in like symphonic band, 5th, 6th, 7th grade.
Yep.
And I put my fingers right where they go. But if you don't practice, just with anything, you start to forget. And when I blow on the clarinet now, it's like a dying animal. It doesn't sound the way that it's supposed to anymore. And so it's like, nope, that just
I remember those days. I played saxophone in band. Couldn't do it now. What is that thing that
the reed?
Yeah,
wet.
You have to make your mouth a certain way and build those muscles up in your mouth.
Your lips
can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Can't do it anymore.
Yeah, you have to. It's a muscle.
Yeah, you'd figure I could because I sit here and talk all day, but
same.
Apparently my face muscles aren't very strong. So you have kids at home, right? You have basically like your own little band at home. I see.
I kind of do.
On your Instagram and Facebook, your kids are not playing the flute and the clarinet, but they're like, one of your kids is a bass guitarist. Is that right?
One of my kids is kind of a little prodigy, and I hope he doesn't hear this interview because I don't want him to get a big head. But I have an 8-year-old daughter who plays ukulele and does not want to be the center of attention. She just loves music, loves to dance, and she actually plays ukulele. And my 10-year-old son is the bass player, but he can play just about anything he puts his hands on, but bass is his strongest instrument. In fact, the other day I was playing a show with Skillet, and he came out, and John was talking to him side stage about the bass. And so although he's seen them play before, since he's been truly a good bass player, he's not seen them live. And so he just stood on the side of the stage and was just blown away. If you've ever seen Skillet live, you know. But John throws the bass around his entire self.
Oh Lord!
Catches it, dripping in sweat, still plays the right note, and I think it was important for him to see, because so often a bass player is seen as the over here next to the drums, helping keep rhythm. But John is a bass player and he's the front man, so it was good for Oliver to see that the bass can be, he loves Sting, and
you're gonna be pulling his bass guitar to your ceiling now.
I know, probably so. And then I have a 12-year-old as well who has taken drums and he's taken piano, and more out of us wanting him to, be in music, just because I think it's good for your brain to learn an instrument and to learn another language. I just think it's good for your brain whether you end up using those things at all. But out of the 3, although this one over here loves to dance and play ukulele and, scroll through all kinds of songs, and Oliver is a entertainer, he is a performer, he is a musician in every sense of the word. Solomon's appreciation, he's 12, of music, his musical palette is ridiculous, where he absolutely loves hip-hop over here, and then he's got a bluegrass song, and he'll tell you why he loves it. So it's just really, he has a true affection for music, but he's more of a techie kind of person.
This is smart, because now you have your own band that you don't have to pay.
Right.
I feed you.
Right.
I brought you into life.
Right.
I gave birth. Now you're my band forever.
Yep.
This is smart.
I have been caught saying to them, because I tried natural childbirth with my first 2 and ended up with emergency C-sections, and so my daughter was a scheduled C-section. But when they don't, like comply. Sometimes I'm like, there's a scar on my stomach. Yeah, you've got to go get me the remote.
You will play bass for me, son, at my next show.
And you will do it.
And you will do it for free, or maybe for a donut.
But they're great. I love that they appreciate what I do. They're proud of what I do. But I'm not trying to make them me. And it's kind of fun to see them find, because my husband he's an entrepreneur and works a lot in like LED screens and things like that. And so my oldest, I feel like, is a little more tech, business, observing, thoughtful-minded than my middle, who is just watch out for him in the future.
Well, so you think like just being around it their whole life, they've come to naturally love music. It wasn't anything you said you have to take lessons or anything like that?
No. I mean, we just expose them to it, and it's around, and it's interesting to see ones be more driven than others and kind of find who they are. And so Oliver, my middle, who's the main primary musician, is in a band right now with Avery Roy, which is Jason Roy of Building 429's son. And it's a legitimate band. Like, they've played at some like venues in Nashville that some Nashville musicians dream of playing at. Like, they've actually been invited to play at. And so it'll just be interesting to see what their future holds. Jason Roy and I both joke about how they're our retirement, and we'll see.
You got it. That has to make you proud, though. Like,
seeing
your kids kind of follow in your footsteps.
I try not to tear up, because he's up there and you're thinking, I changed your diaper, and you are like, he was in a Nirvana versus Pearl Jam cover band for a little while, and they did in another season. They went through all the Kiss songs, and of course, like anything I post, I would get half, that's amazing, that rocks. And then in the other half of like, you're a horrible mother that you would let them listen to Gene Simmons. And so it's, you take it, a grain of salt. It's just like, well, you don't actually really know me truly personally and know how much that little boy loves Jesus, but he also loves music, and how it's not shaping him in the direction that maybe you're concerned that it is. It's actually opening his mind up to understanding things in a world view. And I'm really, really passionate about my kids not being stuck in this little tiny box, because I feel like Jesus needs to be seen in them, and to connect on that level with people that don't know him. It doesn't need to look just like the church that you go to. It needs to look like relationship, community, relativity, people, connection, friendship. And so I don't think I like them being connected to culture, because I think disconnecting it from it entirely just kind of sets them up to be nerds.
If they're in a rock band playing Pearl Jam, I don't think they're nerds. I think they're the furthest thing from nerds. So good job on that one, Mom.
Well, it was just funny to have my 10-year-old son explain to me what "Smells Like Teen Spirit" actually, like the title of that song came from, and I was like, oh, I didn't really. It was a really interesting story of how, he had broken up with a girl, and Kurt Cobain, and she's mad, and so she stops by his place when he's not there and spray paints "Smells Like Teen Spirit" or whatever. And it's like this whole, that was the name of a perfume back in the 90s, and whatever. And he was just going into this, and there was nothing inappropriate about it. It was just like this cool story. And I was like, I actually didn't remember that that's where that song came from, and yet he knows it. And I was like, okay, I think it's a beautiful thing. It's great.
Man, with the internet, kids today, found out anything. Like, they'll just YouTube it so fast.
But mind you, he absolutely loves, they love NF and 21 Pilots, who are all believers, and they absolutely love Toby Mac. They have a really great appreciation, and they have to love Plumb.
Yeah.
Or I'll punch them in the throat.
Yeah, you have to love Mom's songs, all right? Well,
but I do check with them, though, because I feel like at 8, 10, and 12, they do have some kind of an opinion that really is relevant to, like, okay, what do you think of this? And not putting too much weight on it to the capacity that I disconnect from what my brand sounds like, that they don't necessarily fully understand the big picture. But they're really great about saying, this one's I really like this one, it's catchy, or, man, Mom, I really love how the low end sounds, and really getting their feedback, because I continue to want to be authentic to who I am, but something they're proud of.
Man, family could have looked a lot different for you, though. Like, you've been very open about the separation between you and your husband a few years ago, and how that reconciled. Take us back there, and in those moments, a lot of that pain and heartbreak came out in your music during that time as well, too.
Absolutely. And those kids, contrary to popular catchphrase like, let's not stay together just for the kids, your kids are an amazing reason to stay together. And I get why people say, let's not just stay together for the kids because they're fighting and it's abusive and it's not good for their children to see. I get that perspective. However, if you are fighting for what is true and what is best for your children, the best thing for your children is to get your act together and work it out and figure out how to make it work. And we were calling it quits. And so I don't want to sound hypocritical to someone who's on the verge of that. I've been there. Trust me. I actually kind of absolutely know how you're feeling. We separated for 6 months. We didn't live in the same place. And then we dated for about a year because we never officially divorced. And then we renewed our vows all over again 18 months after we had separated. But our kids, there's a poem by Emily Dickinson that says, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, sings a tune without the words and never stops at all. And in that poem, I hear that there's always hope. And I hear there's always hope, not because Jesus died on the cross for me, but because he died on the cross for me, went and conquered hell for me on his day off, and then rose again and resurrected himself, came back to life from the dead so that I could truly never be hopeless in any situation. And so we had a tattoo of a feather put on our arms in response to that poem, but also 3 little birds coming off of that for our kids to say. And it's not to say if you ended in divorce and that means your children don't have wings to fly. That's not what I mean by saying this. But we feel like we gave them true empowerment to spread their wings and truly become all God created them to be because we chose hope. We chose to fight for it, and it was hard, and it's still hard. It's actually still hard. There are weeks that will go by that it's like camp or a slumber party that just never ends, and it's amazing, and you're so glad you fought for it. And then you'll go through a season, a week, a day that you're like, wait a minute, I had a free pass 5 years ago to not do this anymore. And that's the day that the enemy's knocking at your door, target's on your back, and you want to give in and say, no, you know what? I have justification to throw in the towel. And then that's when God's voice fortunately drowns the enemies out and says, no way, that is not what I died and conquered hell and fought for. And I didn't give you this opportunity for you to blow it. And so here's my mercies new again. And so he lets us start over and over and over and over. So if you got to start over and over and over, then you can join my club, because we do. Like, I love my husband with all my heart. We are so thankful that we fought for that. And our children are evidence of God's faithfulness in doing so. But if he was in this interview with me, he would tell you, it is not a bed of roses still all the time. Just because we reconciled and got back together, we're madly in love all the time. We choose because of what we've been through. We've been able to see if we can make it through that, we can totally make it through this ridiculous argument that we're having over whether we should go to Home Depot or Lowe's, whatever.
I mean, marriage is most of the time a choice. I mean, most of the time it's not sunshines and flowers and puppies. I mean, it's a struggle. It's not like what the movies say it's going to be like, And you hear that, but when it's puppies and sunshine and rainbows and unicorns, like if you're in that season, you just don't. You just kind of hear that. It goes in one ear and out the other, and then you're married 11 years, 2 months, and 3 days, and then the bottom falls out, and you're like, whoa, where did this come from? And you can obviously look with hindsight and figure out where it came from pretty quickly, but when you're in it, you're not anticipating it. You're not seeing it until it's, and so for you, whoever you are, if you're in that broken place of marriage, no matter what happens, God can take that and use it for something good. And if nothing else, to draw you closer to him, because he did me. He really, really got my attention. I don't think that he had anything to do with our fall apart. It had 100% to do with Jeremy Lee and Tiffany Lee being selfish and kind of pushing him out, keeping him, he was kind of like on the playground, but he wasn't on this particular, swing set with us. Like we were like, you're here. We acknowledge you. You're a part of our lives. We love you. But we got really caught up in us, and we kind of pushed him out, and to the point where we couldn't hear him saying, stop, no. And so we just did, or said yes, and it just, caught up with us, and it was broken, seemingly beyond repair. And he scooped up those pieces and breathed life into that in a way that I was not anticipating. And I am madly in love with Jesus more than Jeremy Lee now. And I wasn't before. I didn't realize that. But I love Jesus more than and that helps me to be able to love Jeremy Lee and choose Jeremy Lee, even when it's hard. It helps me still not want to
throat punch my kids when they're throwing fits over things that are ridiculous. It's like that grace that he gave to me has caused me to then extend it. And I didn't realize that I wasn't that way before. And
you poured that out into that album, and I think you even had a book that came out with it as well.
Yes.
And I'm sure that has touched so many people. Have you heard like people respond to your music and say, this helped my marriage heal?
Oh, man. I don't say that like, oh, yeah, left and right. In an arrogant way. Like, I hear it left and right, and I say that to inspire whoever is listening right now. Your story matters. I am not an educator. I didn't write a book because I didn't even go to college. I felt completely unworthy and ill-equipped to write a book, much less records and speak and do what I do. I am a storyteller, and my story affects people, and it most of the time inspires or encourages or gives them hope. And I want to be the kind of storyteller that continues to inspire you, the listener, to tell yours. That story could be told by a published book, sure, but it could also be in a coffee meeting with the girl in the cubicle next to you at your work. Like your story there's no small or big to your story. And I think our stories are so important. They say to someone else, me too, you're not alone, and there is only hope in that. And it's when you think and feel that there is the absence of hope is when compromise and chaos and tragedy takes place, because people have given up. And if you can believe that there is always hope, it changes the direction of your life in every possible way. And that's not the only way is to hear someone's story, but man, is that a way that God really encourages community to say. And so keeping to yourself about your struggle, you're not really helping anybody. You're actually hurting yourself. And so there's so much healing that's come from being able to share our broken story. There's accountability in sharing it. Like, I'm telling you that I choose Jeremy Lee. Well, what if I quit choosing him tomorrow? You don't think there would be hundreds and hundreds of people saying, hey, Justin, didn't she just say she's going to choose this? That doesn't mean that it's easy. And I know, but everyone's story is different too. And I won't go into it, but I have someone in mind right now that like kept choosing, and their spouse continued to not choose. And that's not yours to own. So I do believe divorce is inevitable sometimes. It does happen, and that's not to shame anyone that's the direction that their journey takes. The foreword of my book was written by Amy Grant, who's been a mentor to me. And when we were talking about her even writing it, she was like, well, are you sure you want me to do this? Because you guys like remarried each other, and it's like this beautiful story. And Gary and I got a divorce, and I remarried Vince. Like, that's my story. Are you sure you want me to tell that? And I said, absolutely, because there is hope in your story. There's hope in everybody's story. It doesn't have to just turn out like a fairy tale. And so, yes, to answer your question in short, lots of people saying thank you, thank you, thank you. It gave me some hope, which is oxygen to my lungs, and we all need to breathe. And there's an ocean overflowing with it. We just are so devastated in our darkness sometimes that we just can't see it. So we need someone to say, hey, me too. You're not by yourself.
And even on this latest album, Exhale, there are so many songs that, man, you can just feel the sincerity and the honesty just coming out of the words and out of the music. The title track, Exhale. What's the story behind this one?
When we were separated, my husband went to church with, who is now my tour manager, but has been a friend of ours for like 20 years. And he took him to church, and the pastor that morning had said, everyone, welcome. I'm so-and-so. Welcome to this church. And he ended up saying, if you are not okay this morning, that's okay. It's okay to not be okay. This is a safe place to be here. That's a starting point. And he kind of just flippantly said it, not that it wasn't important and powerful and meaningful, but he was just kind of saying like, it's okay not to be okay. But it was like a bullhorn in my husband's ears, who, although both broken and both responsible for that brokenness in our marriage, he had opted to leave and was done, and was like not coming back at a particular point. And so he was there against his will in the first place, and Ricky had made him come to church with him. And so when he heard that, he didn't tell me the story for a long time. And so the song was written obviously a long time later, but he said when he heard that, he was like, I am definitely not okay, but someone just said that that's okay. And he said it was very emotional for me. And it was like, what does that even mean? Well, it's a starting point. It's a starting point. It's a starting point to say, you know what, I'm not okay, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because God knows my finish line down here. And that is a beautiful restorative story. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I have faith to believe that it is that. And so he said, I remember hearing it's okay to not be okay and having this relief, but also feeling like, okay, so we're getting a divorce and it's going to be okay. And our kids are going to grow up in a broken home and it's going to be okay. And to all the things that he thought was going to happen, he had this peace that, but I'm going to be okay. And something about that just started to change the direction of his decision making and giving him hope. And when he had more and more and more and more hope, then he had more hope that maybe I could change, and more hope that maybe we could change, and maybe more hope that our family could be whole again. And then, we remarried. And so exhale is, it's okay to not be okay, opening line. And after Restored, that same pastor had said that grace is something we breathe in and it changes us, and it should humble us. And then we exist. I mean, maybe you're a doctor, maybe you're a lawyer, maybe you're a secretary, maybe you're radio, maybe you're an artist, whatever you are, we all exist to breathe it in, let it change us, and then go and exhale, to breathe it out, to serve others, to love others, to share our stories. And when he said that, I was like, that's the song. And so I just kind of connected those two moments together and said, it's okay to not be okay, breathe in his grace, and then breathe it out. And keep doing that over and over and over. And sometimes it's just one day at a time.
I think the main goal, the main story here is go to church and you write great songs. I think that's what it is. So if you want to be a songwriter, just go to church.
I do.
I'm just kidding.
I do take some notes that definitely help. But I think some of my most important songs have come from a moment inspired by the absolute unconditional relationship with my children, and the humility that comes with that, or fans coming to me and sharing their story of brokenness and then turning around and wanting to be the voice for them because they feel silenced. And I mean, that continues to go back to the broken girl, whoever she is. I'm her number one fan.
Well, another big song from this record was Lord, I'm Ready Now. Take us behind the scenes on this one and where you were when you wrote it.
Well, that speaking of broken girls, that was me, the broken girl, the self-absorbed would tell you, this is not about fame and fortune. My bio even said that for a while, like fame and fortune are fleeting, but making a difference in someone's life lasts for eternity. Like that may be a true statement, but that is not truly how I felt. I really wanted to be famous and I really wanted to be rich. And in pursuit of those things, I lost myself, and narcissism, self-centeredness, you name it. And then my marriage fell apart. And then there was a night when a neighbor had brought over, she knew that we were struggling. We were losing our house. He had already moved out, and the money was gone. Somehow it like vanished in a day. It just felt like, wait a minute, we can't pay for gymnastics lessons. We can't pay for piano lessons. We have to cancel the cable and the internet and just left and right, this domino of it's all slipping away. And I go to the front porch, and there's a basket full of just the bare necessities to make spaghetti, like the noodles, some bread, some sauce, a devotional book, and a journal and a card. And it was from a neighbor friend of mine that just said, use this journal to write things that you're thankful for, because I know right now you can only see the things that you're not thankful for. This is, my favorite devotional, which is still my favorite devotional, Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. Go get it if you don't have it. It's the best thing ever. And then everything to make spaghetti, because the last thing you need to do with 3 kids in the middle of all of this is have to worry about going to the grocery store or what's for supper. So here's spaghetti. And I know my friend Laura dropped that off. I know that. But God took me out for Italian that night. God told me, I've got this, like even to the point where I'm going to take you to dinner. And me and my 3 little ducks sat and had Italian, and I felt like a queen. I felt this romance for Jesus come in that had not ever been there, that it was like, man, if he cares enough to take care of our dinner tonight, I don't have anything to really be afraid of. And you know what? Jeremy might not come back, but Jesus isn't going anywhere. And so in that season, I didn't want to be her anymore. I was like, I know I'm broken. I'm human. I don't care about money anymore. I don't care about fame. I care about these 3 people sitting in front of me and being faithful to them. What is the most faithful thing I can do for them? It's to fight for their dad and I to work this out. It's for me to not be the most narcissistic, self-centered mother that has ever existed. It's for me to quit being who I was. And you know what? I actually might need to start over again tomorrow. Like, this might not actually stick for a month or a year, or I may have to start over and over and over. But my sister-in-law reminded me in that season that in Lamentations 3:23, his mercies are new every single morning. And that doesn't mean like 6 a.m. when the sun comes up. That means every split second is a new morning. And you can say, okay, I'm sorry. Oh, God help me. Just let me start over. And so I did. I started over, and I was like, I don't know that I'm going to be a single mother or a married mother. But Lord, I'm ready now to not be her anymore. And when I start to fall back into her, which I still do, thank you that there is grace for me to say, can I start over again, please?
Yeah.
And he says yes every time before I've even asked him to. And that's something I can get behind. Like, I want to be a part of that.
I do think that's a daily process. I mean, as much as, we don't want to admit it, we're full of ourselves. I am, like I look at things that I do. And
he
I
knew
go,
that. That's why he went to the extreme of a cruel death and resurrect. Like, he went through all of that because he knew how sinful and human and selfish that we are, and that he still loves us. Like, and would do it and would sacrifice all over again to do it again if he needed to. Like, what? So I want to give my life to that. Yeah. Sold.
The next song is Smoke. Tell us the story behind it. I think it's kind of along the same lines, isn't it?
It is. It kind of it's my favorite song on Exhale, and it just kind of walks you through the emotional process of walking through what feels worse than death. And we hear that, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Like, sometimes things feel worse than death. I remember in our broken story, and then in other situations that I've consequently experienced even since then, that you go through, that you're like, you know what, death would kind of feel like a massage right now compared to this. And for those that might relate in broken marriage specifically, just to use as an example, although our marriage was broken and he was still alive and I'm still alive, I can't tell you the days that it would have been easier to swallow that he had passed away, or that I would like to just check out, than to be unloved, to be unwanted, to be betrayed, to be all of those things. In my mind, I would play over and over, like, would it be easier if he had cancer? Would it be easier if, and my brain was like, you know what? It would be easier if he died. It would be easier if I died. Like, to live a life of unlove and unwant, like, short of something happening to your children, that's a whole nother category. But in my experience as a human being, you walk through things, and the song Smoke says, though I walk through a valley that feels worse than death, I'm slow to speak, instead I hear your voice. And that is because in James 1:19 it says, be slow to speak, quick to listen. I am a chatterbox, and I don't listen well. And that whole season, I kept writing James 1:19 on my hand over and over and over because it would wash off. And it was, God's way of gentlemanly reminding me to shut up, would just listen to me. And so in Smoke, I talk about listening to his voice. And it says, you can come to me because I am that hope that you are feeling so absent of. And I am everything you will ever need. I will fill it. And if you imagine smoke, like it's consuming. And so it wasn't really a play on words of like exhale and smoke. We're going to put them on the same record. They really are independent from each other, but smoke is just all consuming. And smoke represents fire, destruction, ash, soot. For the majority of everything I just listed, there's just purposelessness, right? Like, what really can you do with ashes besides maybe like fertilize your garden? I hear maybe, I don't know, but like, it's destroyed. And God can take the most ugly, nasty, sticky, tarry, gross, seemingly useless thing and turn it into something so beautiful. And that's what he did in our marriage. That's what he did in our hearts. And so that's the story that Smoke tells, that he can be all of that. But guess what? You have to choose. He lets you choose. You don't have to. You get to choose whether or not you're going to let him do that. And I'm thankful that later than sooner, I wish I had chosen sooner than later, but eventually I chose that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the restoration in my life and the hope in my life is evidence now of that. And I just want to keep telling that story over and over.
I love the fact that you're so open and honest about this stuff. I mean, you're an open book. And
thank you.
I
I
did speak with somebody you had toured with, and they told me you were an open book.
Oh.
And they told me some other things too. I've never done this before, but I'm gonna.
I always get nervous because I have like seventh grade boy humor.
I'm gonna give away who told me this, but before I tell you what they told me, I'd love to hear what you think they told me.
Okay.
So I spoke with Darren from We Are Messengers, who you've been on tour with quite a bit,
and is one of my best friends.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I knew this, and I said, tell me something that I would not ever find on her Facebook page, on her website, anything. What do you think,
I think
he told me about you?
Oh man, he knows so much about me, and I kid you not. I mean, I hope he would share the same sentiment. We toured with Big Daddy Weave last year in 2016 and became super. I mean, his wife is just. I would do anything for their family. They have become family to me, and we kind of joked. There was 3 or 4 of us that really got really close on that tour, and it's like you go to work and you work with people, but then sometimes you actually get to become family with each other, and that is kind of our story. He is one of my best friends. I love him. He knows so many bizarre, weird things that he would be like, "What, Tiff?" And he's from Ireland, so there's just things that the American aspect to me that he would constantly be like, "What? No way." So I kind of don't know. I don't know that I love to pressure wash. That's something that usually people don't.
You love to pressure wash.
I love mindless, productive things. Like I don't mind dishes or folding laundry because you don't really have to use your brain to do it, but it's still productive.
Yeah.
But I love pressure washing. I don't know why.
Interesting.
I love it, but
he did not tell me that, but that's good.
You gotta tell me. You gotta tell me.
So he told me that entire tour,
yes,
you pulled pranks on each other the whole time, and he tried so hard to make you mad, and he couldn't make you mad. He's like, you can't make Plumb mad. Like she's just so chill, so easygoing.
Lots of pranks, yes, for sure. Yes.
He told me about the time that he like basically rearranged the whole hotel room before you got in there.
100%.
And he thought that was going to make you so fuming mad, but you were just
I just took pictures of all of it. I loved it. Honestly, it was like, for those familiar with the 5 love languages, it was like filling my love tank because it was like this thoughtfulness.
Pranks are your love language.
Yeah, pranks are my love language. Like maybe there's a 6th in there that they can decide what that means. But I would do because we would usually you have a shower room, and so because we were on a bus, we didn't spend the night at the event, in the city. So you go to the hotel that afternoon, then you go back to the venue. And so we would just take turns, like, Tiff, you get room 216, and when you're done with it, give it to Blasco and Darren. And knowing they were going to come in there. I mean, I had fake poop I would put in there or like, my hair out of the drain. I would one time I took my hair from the drain and spelled hello Joe to Joe Shirk, the keyboard player for Big Daddy Weave. And so when he got back to the venue, he was like, I think I'm supposed to feel loved by the fact that you did that, but you can totally not do that again. It would be fine with me. But yeah, I mean, I would just and I'm the only girl. And so constantly one quick thing would be that if I had just not pranked anybody all day, it would be like, oh, I'm about to go to bed. I got to do something. I would just, as you pull your socks off to get in the bunk, I would just fling them, and then they would end up in someone's bunk.
Yes, he told me that usually he would find smelly socks in his bunk. He'd be
like, Tiff, your sock's in here. Oh, I've got her other sock. And it was like, hey, you're welcome, guys. And it's just, it was a way, and I will tell you this, initially pranking for me, because I'm usually the only girl, or there's few girls around. And so it's a way for me to kind of connect with the boys, is to just kind of be a prankster and be silly and be funny and use humor to kind of break down do you talk to the girl? Like, do you treat her like your sister, or do you treat her like, and I became their sister. But that was a way for me to kind of just break that wall down and connect and leave socks in their bunk.
Yeah, he didn't give me anything like really bad on you. He just basically told me that
he was just being a gentleman. But he's some.
He's like, I tried to make her mad, but couldn't do it.
But the hotel. I mean, it was literally like the desk chair was on top of the bed. The little thing that you lay your suitcase on was in the shower. One time they hid the shower curtain, and it didn't have a bathtub. It was a shower. So
okay,
you
that's
had
just
to
wrong.
shower, so you couldn't take a bath instead. And I could not find it anywhere. And I was like, stink! I'm gonna have to take a shower with this no shower. And I did. I had to take a shower with no shower curtain, and it was just awkward. And I, of course, got back later, and I was like, okay. So where was it? And they were like, in the drawer underneath the TV. And I forgot that the little dresser that the TV was sitting on had a couple drawers in. I skipped looking there, but yeah.
One compliment he did give you. He said, "I feel like she's writing the best music of her career right now." I'm guessing he's maybe heard some of these new songs before.
And I don't think he's saying it for this reason, but he co-wrote a song with me called "Human."
Oh, he's saying it for that reason. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure he totally no. But I've let him hear some of it, just because of who he is in my life and my friendship with him, and so he's really kind to say that. And I think he's a brilliant songwriter and musician, and I'm not just saying that because we're friends. Listen to songs that he's written, good grief. And so for him to say that's a huge compliment. But I love him to death, so that's sweet that he said that.
You do have new music coming out really soon.
I do.
This first song is coming, God Help Me Now, off this new record that's a little while away, but we get a little taste here with this brand new song.
Yes.
What's the story behind this new one?
Well, we were the co-writers and I of Need You Now. Luke Sheets, Crystal Wells, and I, we wrote Need You Now together. And so we have really, since Need You Now, that was one of the first songs we'd written together. But in the years since that, we have become kind of a writing trio that we could write by ourselves, but we just want to be the three of us all the time. I was telling them how Need You Now, I didn't intentionally make that a song that you scream at the top of your lungs as a prayer. I was just telling a story of my struggle with anxiety and depression, and how many times I had needed God over and over and over, and that he was always there. And but I was telling them how fans connect with it because it's a prayer that you scream at the top of your lungs. And I'm not wanting to write Need You Now Part 2, but I want to give another song that's a prayer that you scream at the top of your lungs. And I want it to be authentic to experience and storytelling. And that 2016 year last year out with Big Daddy Weave, life-changing for me, but for lots of different reasons. And one of them was when I first came out with them, I did 120 shows with them, which is very uncommon to tour that many shows with an artist. It does happen, but it's not very common. And so I had signed up for 120 shows, not even knowing them. I didn't bring any of my team because you use their band, you use their crew, you use and so they provide everything, but you just kind of come on your own. And so I was anxious. I felt really insecure. I felt really prideful. And so there's a lot of emotions coming into that I wasn't expecting. And so they also do something that is authentic to Big Daddy Weave is at the end of the night, they just let people come up and they just put their hands on them and pray with them and talk to them and love on them and physically touch them. And all that sounds so seemingly normal in the Christian faith. Not to me. It's not. I was like, what? When I'm done with the show, I kind of like peace out, and then I go to the merch table, and that's where I connect and hug, and I'm all about that. That's great, but like I'm not walking into the audience and like hugging on people and praying with them. That's weird to me.
I grew up Pentecostal, so we do that all the time.
Well, I did not grow up that way, and so I was like, man, praying with people and like really being sensitive to what the Holy Spirit's saying. Although that's great, little foreign to me in that regard. And so I was anxious, I was insecure, and my pride was getting the best of me. And so we probably played 30 shows together before I ever really listened to God's voice, and found myself saying, God, help me all the time with my pride. Help me with my anxiety. Help me with my insecurities right now. Help me with how I feel a little unworthy. Help me how I, feel that, in my struggle with just as a woman, in comparison to other artists, to other women, to other mothers, to other wives, being gone that much from my husband, and he was traveling as well with his business. And so it was like, man, God, help me to continue to choose and to be present with my children, even though I'm physically absent a lot. And so there was a lot of emotional days where all I could say was, oh, God, help me. Oh, God, help me. And it was a prayer that I've taught my children to pray when they were a lot younger, 8, 10, and 12 now. Since they were able to understand, I've always just said, if you just say, God, help me, he hears you. You don't really have to have an elaborate prayer. If you're scared or afraid or whatever, just say, God, help me. And so to hear them in their growth with Jesus even say, oh, God, help me. And you're like, what's going on? Well, I can't figure out this math problem, or whatever it is. And so that just being kind of a core value of our home and a prayer that we pray, meeting me in such an intimate place. And so I'm telling Luke and Krista that story, and we began talking about a mutual friend that we have whose marriage is literally falling apart at the seams after 20 plus years of marriage and 4 kids and all this. They are literally, and it's affecting a lot of people because they've been connected to a lot of people for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so I had them in mind because I've been through the broken marriage. I had my children in mind of the simplicity of just that prayer, but putting myself into it of how many times things have seemed black and white, but then how many times they've been right in the middle and you don't really know what to do. Mm-hmm. And you have to just say, God, help me. And so no matter how extreme your story may be, as innocent or extreme as it may be, it's a prayer that you scream at the top of your lungs, and it says, God, help me.
I'm so excited for new music from Plumb. We get a little taste right now with this song. New record coming out, beginning of the year, maybe?
Beginning of 2018, yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Thank you so much for being here and sharing the stories behind these songs. This has been awesome.
This is.